And we are live. G'day everyone, Mike Jeffrey here, and you are listening to My Creative Journey, episode number 47. To all your listeners out there, hello, and thank you so much for taking the time to stop by here today. As I said, my name is Mike, and I'm a photographer, podcaster, and small business owner based here in Port Macquarie, Australia. Each week on the show, I bring you guys along on the highs and lows of my own creative journey and share all the knowledge that I've gained along the road to building my own freelance business. Now, in this week's episode, you're going to be listening to an old recording that I did of this exact episode. I was originally recording an episode about work-life balance, and I didn't really enjoy the episode, so I think I'm going to go back and record that one. I think you'll hear that as episode 48. But in the start of that, I was talking about my goals for this year and how I've gone with some of those goals and how I've been reflecting on how I actually set goals. And I didn't want to throw that part away. I really wanted to be able to include that in an episode, and I thought that it didn't really match in with what I was talking about for the rest of the episode in terms of work-life balance. So I really wanted to make it as its own episode. It's a bit of a shorter one, but I think I'll throw it in after this and you'll hear it as if I've just been recording this episode right now. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. This is actually the first episode I'm recording in December, so I thought I would jump into a theme all around goals, and because that has been something that I've been thinking about over the past week as it came to the 1st of December, I started to think about my goals for the year that I had at the start of the year and trying to reflect on those and see where we are and how far we have to go before the end of the year. And I think that is a thing that a lot of people would be thinking about around this time of year, and especially moving into the new year as well. If you're not listening to this episode straight as it airs, you'll be probably thinking about this as the new year comes around, because I know it's definitely something that I tend to think about towards the end of the year. And I'm always surprised that it is something that I do tend to think about at the end of the year and the start of each year. It's a strange phenomenon that we tend to only be able to set goals at the end of the year, at the end of or the start of the year, or at the start of and the end of every month, or the end of every week, or things like that. We like to give ourselves a time frame, and I think that is important. I think it's important to be able to have a time frame because we don't work well with just open-ended constraints, but often that can result in, if you're spanning your goals over a long period of time, as a year is. I think a year is a long time to spend on a goal, but it allows you to work towards a substantial goal, but it also is a long period of time where you can go through that bit of a dip in the middle of the year. And I think a lot of people would experience that, where they start out the year really good on their goals and they tend to overachieve on most of their goals towards the start of the year, and they feel like they're really moving towards their goals really well. But then it can start to sort of lose steam a few months in, because the span of 12 months is a long time, and we can start to underestimate how much we actually have to do still, and therefore we start to ease off, and through those middle months of the year, we can tend to slow down and sort of go through that bit of a dip, and then come back at the end of the year with only a few months to go and think, I've still got a lot to do to be able to hit those goals for the end of the year. And so we often tend to have more motivation, more drive towards the end of the year. I think it tends to either go you're one of two ways, where you can have those goals from the start of the year and they've either dropped off completely, like everyone who signed up for a gym membership at the start of the year and that just completely dropped off after 3 months. I think there's a lot of scenarios like that. But then there are also a fair few goals that people have that they would like to achieve by the end of the year. And if they haven't hit them in October, November, they're starting to ramp back up to be able to get to that point, to be able to hit them at the end of the year. And it's not that they've actually dropped them off completely. It's that they just went through a bit of a period of being a bit relaxed about them and then really had to pick it up towards the end of the year. And I think for me, that has been the case on a fair few of my goals that I was aiming towards at the start of the year. I don't think I've been overly consistent for the whole year, but I think that's the good part about a year. You can have ups and downs. You don't need to be overly flat on your goals. It's good to have long-term goals because you can go through those sort of seasons of working towards something, and you can feel like even if you've had a bit of a downturn, you can still bring it back up. And overall, your general trend is that you're working towards something. So that has been something that I've been looking at through this past week. I'm not sure if you guys remember, but I did set a few goals towards the start of the year, and I think I aired them on an episode of this podcast, actually. So I was speaking about all the different types of goals I had, and there were a few big ones that I really wanted to hit. There were a few in personal life, but also a few in my business as well, and I just wanted to go through a few of those and really speak on them. One of the obvious goals that I had was to be able to start a podcast, and that was one of the things that I really wanted to be able to do at the start of the year, but I didn't really just set that open-ended goal to start a podcast. I really wanted to set the goal of being able to record an episode each and every week of the year. So I wanted to record about 50 episodes throughout the whole year. And I really set that goal at the start because I thought that it would be something that was sustainable and something that I was able to do, because I never wanted to walk in with just the goal of starting a podcast, because I think anyone can start a podcast and anyone can just record an episode of a podcast, but being able to be consistent over the course of the year, I think is really important. And so I did make sure that I was able to set a clear goal of what I wanted to do. So I think for me, there have been a few weeks where I haven't recorded episodes, and that has been something that I've been reflecting on and try to actually catch up on a few of the episodes and try to release a few more at a time. There have certainly been weeks where I haven't released any episodes. There have been other weeks that I've released 2 episodes. So trying to work towards that and trying to make sure I'm hitting that 50 goal by the end of the year. And that has been something that I'm pretty on target to do. I think by the end of the year, we should hit number 50. We're at episode 47 at the moment. So that's really nice and really, really good to see that I've been able to stay fairly consistent with that. There certainly have been some changes throughout the podcast, throughout the year. And that was to be able to make the process a little bit easier for me, to be able to make some of the things more streamlined. But I think overall, I've been really enjoying the process. So being able to turn up here each week and record an episode has been really nice. Another goal I had was that I wanted to read a book every month of the year. Now, that was another goal that I set, and I wanted it to be more structured like that rather than just an amount of books per year. So I didn't want to just say, let's just read 12 books for the year. I really wanted to make sure I gave myself that target of a book every month, because that broke it up into smaller pieces that were more actionable for me. So every single month I knew I had to read another book, and that was something that I was aiming towards. If all else, even if I didn't hit it, at least I was aiming towards being able to read a book every single month. And I think for the majority of the year, I've actually hit that goal. I think I'm up to about 10 books now at the end of November. And so I've still got to read 2 more in this last month. That's because I had a few books earlier in the year that did drag on for a bit longer than a month, and they were a bit harder to read. So I obviously didn't want to be too hard and fast on that rule, but certainly it was good to be able to have that rule in place. Another goal that I had was that I wanted to run 100 kilometers every month, and you can start to see it as sort of general theme here around the goals, and that I wanted to structure them into smaller chunks to be able to really be able to make them more actionable. I think if you really set yourself a goal that's way too big that you can't understand how that needs to be achieved, it can often seem way too daunting and can be too hard to start. So if I was to set myself the goal of being able to run 1,200 kilometers for the year, that is a very big goal that you wouldn't even know where to start. You wouldn't know how often you have to run there. You wouldn't know how far you have to run. You wouldn't be able to set yourself up in the right mindset to be able to go out there and achieve things on a day-to-day basis, which I think things need to be broken down into that space. So for me, that 100 kilometers a month was broken down into about 25 kilometers a week. So therefore, I know how far I have to go each and every week and then I can determine how often I have to run, how often, if I need to go every day, every other day, depending on how far I'd like to run each and every time. I think at the end of November, I'd run about 1,070 kilometers. So I've got another 130 to go in the last month. As I said, I didn't hit that 100 kilometer mark every single month, but we're fairly close, and I think it's still achievable to get to by the end of the year. And then the last goal I want to touch on was one that I'd set in my business, and that was to shoot 10 weddings by the end of the year. Now, that was a large, ambitious goal that I wanted to be able to shoot 10 weddings in my first year of photography. And that was, I really put that out there to be able to drive myself, because I knew if I just said I wanted to be able to shoot my first wedding, that once I shot only one, then there would be nothing else driving me on. And so I wanted to set that goal of being able to shoot 10. Obviously, it was a lot harder. We went into lockdown for about 3.5 months of the year, so that did make it harder. It didn't start till March either, so that made it a lot harder. But I genuinely thought that there was actually a chance of me actually achieving that goal, because if I didn't think there was a chance, I think that would have made it too hard. I think I never wanted to set a goal where it was way too out of reach, but I also didn't want to set a goal that was a bit easy. I didn't want to set a goal of only shoot one. I didn't want to set a goal of only shoot one wedding, because, as I said, it would have been hard to continue on after that. And it's not really a goal then. It's just like a task. It's not something that I need to achieve. It's just a thing on my to-do list. It's just a thing that I need to get done this year. So that would have made it too easy. But in a task like I need to be able to shoot 10, that would require some effort. That would require me to go and contact a lot of people. That would require me to be able to put myself out there more than just asking a friend or family member to go and shoot at their wedding. So I actually thought that was genuinely achievable. And I think it is going to be something that I continue on to into next year, because I'd love to keep increasing. And that goal, whilst I didn't hit it, I think I've definitely learned a lot from it. And I've definitely had opportunities to be able to achieve that goal. So that is not something that I'm not going to take anything away from, and I'm not going to use that. I don't think I'm going to quit on that goal. Is that basically what I'm trying to say? I don't think that having a goal that you don't then reach means that you need to end that goal completely. I think it can still be something that you move on into next year. And so as I reflected on those goals, it was very striking to me how many of those goals were orientated around the numbers, how many of them were numerical in value of things that I needed to achieve. And I think for me, in the past, it's often easier to be able to set a goal that has a numeric value. We can easily quantify how much we need to do, how many things we need to do. Everyone seems to relate a goal around a numeric value that they would want to achieve a certain thing. And I read the book Atomic Habits in September this year, and I'm not sure if I spoke about it on the podcast. I believe I did, but I think one of the big takeaways that I got from that book was how to be able to set habits and how to set routines in place to achieve goals. And he really broke it down into reversing the order of how we be able to set our actual habits through our day-to-day and breaking down what it actually means to set a goal. Now, for me, a goal, as you've just heard, is often a numeric value, and it's a thing I need to strive for to be able to achieve. Now, he changed that, and he said that rather than having that numeric value, rather than having an amount of things that you want to achieve, why don't we try to achieve the lifestyle of someone who would already do that? And I think that really struck a chord for me, because for me, for the longest time, having goals has always been that year in, year out thing, because once we achieve a goal, where do we then go to from there? I think once you achieve any sort of goal, it can be hard to keep moving on because you don't know what the actual purpose of the goal was in the first place. I think a goal with a numeric value is just a placeholder that really is you breaking it down into your head into actionable tasks that you need to do to get towards that goal. But I think I'd mistaken that for the actual goal. The actual task that I needed to do to get to the goal had been mistaken for the goal itself. And once you achieve that, numeric value that you'd place on it, it can be hard to be able to find purpose after that. It can be hard to know what it was you were trying to achieve in the first place. And so for me, I've really had to go back over a lot of my goals and think, what was it that I was trying to achieve with these goals? I think these were all tasks that I was trying to do, and these were all things that I could incorporate into my routine, yes, but they may not have actually been a goal that I was striving for in my own life. So repositioning goals in terms of a lifestyle and repositioning goals in terms of the person who you were trying to become, I think is one thing that I'm really going to do next year. And I am going to make a whole episode about this, I think, in the early stages of next year, about how I am able to set those goals. But I wanted to run through how I would change some of those goals, because I think it's important for you to really grasp this mindset, because it was really helpful for me in being able to determine where I need to go with these goals for next year. So rather than saying that I want to read 12 books for the year, or rather than saying I want to read a book each month, what sort of lifestyle does that incorporate? What is the aim of that? That is to become someone who reads a book. And for me, to be able to read a book every month, it all but meant that I needed to read every single day of the month. So rather than saying that I want to be able to read 12 books for the year, I need to then say I want to become someone who reads. So to incorporate that into my daily routine, because if I was someone who reads, then I would do that on a day-to-day basis, regardless of if I had to be able to hit a goal for the end of the year, or I didn't have that goal at all, because I just enjoy the act of reading. So regardless of whether that goal is there, I would still read. So I've got to think about, what would someone who reads, what would they do? Would they, every night before bed, would they read a book? Probably, because they enjoy the act of reading. So if I want to become someone who reads a book every single day, I need to become someone who enjoys the act of reading. And I think that is the goal. That is the end game here of what we're trying to do with each of our goals. It's much easier then in that vein to be able to run 100 kilometers every month if I become someone who runs every morning. If I incorporate that into my lifestyle, if I become that person. I think if I look back on my journey into sort of podcasting, it's become easier for me because I've incorporated that into my lifestyle. I've become a person who podcasts on a regular basis. I record a podcast every single week, and I know that, and I have included that in the type of person I am. That, like, I can introduce myself as someone who records a podcast every single week. That is something that I have incorporated into my lifestyle. So it's made it much easier to then record each and every week, because that is something that I do every single week. So being able to reflect on that and being able to see what it is that I want to achieve, and being able to see what the end game is for each of these goals. all these actionable tasks that I've had for the past few years as goals, as placeholders for goals, really need to be swapped out for something that I am actually aiming for. And then it's great to break those goals down into actionable tasks of things that you actually want to achieve throughout the year and things that you need to do to be able to set yourself up and set your lifestyle up to revolve around those things. If that is genuinely something that you want to do, I think that's important. But making sure that you're aware of what the goal is. Do you want to become someone who goes for a run every day? Do you want to become someone who runs? Is there an action around that? Do you want to become someone who runs half marathons? If that's the person who you would like to become, then you probably need to be able to put steps in place to be able to become that person. But on their own, the steps in isolation do not make you that person. But I think if you become that person, those steps will fall into place regardless. So I think that has been something that I've been thinking about, and that has been something that I think I'm going to have to change my ideology around when I go to set those goals next year. And I thought that I would share that because I think that could be very helpful for a lot of people in changing their mentality on how they're able to set goals. That is where I'm going to leave this episode, guys. I really hope that was a little bit insightful for you. As I said, I recorded that a couple of weeks ago, and I thought that it would be important to really share because I've been reflecting a lot of my goals and how I've been going about trying to set goals. I think important to think about the reasons why we set goals. I think it's super important in having an aim and having a clear why, having an understanding of why we're setting a goal. There's no point having a goal in isolation. The goal needs to be working towards something that you're trying to change in your own lifestyle. So for me, thinking about lifestyle choices and thinking about the person who I want to become with those goals. So how does that help me to become the person who ultimately I would like to be? And then working back from that and setting clear goals and setting tasks around that can help me to become that type of person. And I think looking at it in that reverse way, sort of reverse engineering your way to get to the goal by starting out of who you want to become and then looking back and breaking it up into small actionable chunks. I think that's very, very important, but overall you need to know why it is you have that goal. And then I think the other big point around the goals is to make sure that they are large enough. We all want to be able to achieve goals, but we don't want to make them so small that they are able to just be actions on our to-do list every single day. If they're that easy to do, then they wouldn't be a point actually having the goal. We need to set goals that actually make us get outside our comfort zone, that make us push ourselves to be able to achieve big things. If it was really easy, we would never be able to push ourselves to be able to go and do anything, and it would never really change us in any way at all. So there'd be no point having that goal. So make sure that they are large enough that you may struggle to achieve them. You don't always have to hit goals. If you're always achieving your goals, you're never going to be motivated to continue on and to continue to set goals because it's going to be very hard to keep going with those. So make sure they're just a little bit out of your reach. So you do have to work a little bit in order to get to them. And I hope that this was helpful, and I hope you guys actually learned or actually had to think about something throughout this episode, and it helps you structure your goals as you're moving into next year and moving into your next stages in your creative journey. So with that said, guys, I hope you really enjoyed this episode, and I will speak to you all again next Monday. Bye.